Music is just music, but just for a minute, talk about just generally speaking. We're going to speak in generalities for a minute. Classical music versus rock music versus Broadway music versus marching band music.
Yeah, I mean, so if any of you during the pandemic took my class called "If you like rock," sorry, if you like classical, you should love metal. Will know that there is a lot of overlap between the classical world and the rock world. I mean, even from the simple fact that harmonically, right? I mean, most rock music is going to go 1 4 5 1, right? Every now and then, with a two chord thrown in there, but it's basically what Mozart was doing, right? And structurally, right, we have a lot of verse chorus, right, with a bit of a bridge in there, and it looks a lot like sonata allegro form, right? That we get, A and then B, and then we get back to A, and then we'll throw in a scherzo, and then we go to the coda. Right. And so it really is, there is so much overlap in there. And I like to say that if Mozart had access to electric guitars, he certainly would have been writing for them, right? And we take for granted that all of the orchestral instruments have always existed. They haven't, right? I mean, if you look at a Mozart score, he didn't write for tuba because there was no tuba, right? Likewise, but Beethoven did have access to tubas, so he started writing for that, right? And so the rock music that we love today is really just an outgrowth of these people, right? And I mean, and let's talk specifically, right? Let's go to somebody like Chopin, right? I mean, Chopin was a legitimate rock star. Right? I mean, he had people that followed him all over the place to go to his concerts. I mean, he would destroy pianos, right? Just like people, today are destroying their guitars. And I mean, and he had groupies. I mean, he like legitimately was a rock star. And so that outgrowth is very linear, right? It's very easy to see that. Now, sometimes it's not quite that linear, but the differences are far smaller than the similarities are great. And certainly like for the marching band world, that's just louder classical music, right? I mean, just without strings. So what we get to do at the Commanders is what's called the drum corps, right? So it's just brass and percussion. We don't have woodwinds there as well. I mean, because the reality is, unless you've got 40 flutes on the field, nobody's going to hear them. What's the point of a clarinet, really? I like clarinets, I really do, but you need so many of them on a marching band field, and so a lot of people end up playing mellophones.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Or piccolos. I played piccolo for long enough to blow out the hearing in one side of
yeah,
my
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and so we talk sometimes about opera. When we talk about going to the opera now, we assume that we're going to see something that was written 150, 200 years ago and something that's a classic. But in fact, up until the early 1900s, when you went to the opera, it was an expectation, just like going to the movies, that you were going to go see something new, right?
Absolutely.
We're not turning on the rock and roll, radio station necessarily expecting to hear things from 100 years ago. We're expecting to hear, maybe if it's an 80s station, things from the 80s, but otherwise we're expecting to hear the newest and latest and greatest. And that's
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I mean, in those, so I'm actually conducting a brand new opera coming up in just a couple of weeks. In 2 weeks, I'll be on a plane down to South America. I'm debuting, we're doing the world premiere of a new opera, For Whom the Bell Tolls. And so new operas are being written. If any of you happen to be in Brazil, June 12th through 28th or whatever, I want to come hear that. Let me know.
as you do.
Yeah, but again, talking about like the rock stars of the day, right? Some of those like early sopranos, especially, were, I mean, they were the rock stars. They were the divas. And the thing is, it's really interesting there. I mean, now when you go to a rock show today, if somebody is touring with their new album, right? Mostly what they want to be playing is stuff off of their new album. But everybody wants to hear the stuff that they grew up with, right?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
goes to hear Green Day today, and like I'm gonna be like, dude, just play everything from Dookie. That's what I want to hear, right? And
Right.
they're like, no, we want to play the stuff off our new album. And likewise, I mean, those sopranos would frequently get asked to sing things from operas that were not, or arias from different operas, right? That people fell in love with them singing that. And so just in the middle of an opera, they would just sing an aria from a different show, you know?
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so,
Um, and that crossover was totally normal and just a
yep,
part of the show experience.
yep.
Okay, so you started at Encore not as a rocks conductor, right?
No, so I saw a posting. So when I moved to DC, I had no family, I had no friends. I Natalie and I were married, but she was a 1L in law school, right? So she was just always in school. The Haiti earthquake happened, and I volunteered to put together a classical benefit concert, just in support of the earthquake victims. And like a month after that happened, I'd been hired. I was hired by the Symphony Orchestra of Northern Virginia. At the time, it was the Symphony Orchestra of Arlington. So I always tell everybody, I'm like, volunteer. You never know what will happen. And so I had that, but that was not a full time job. So I still needed to be making a little bit more money. And I saw, if you can believe this, I literally saw on Craigslist that Jean had posted that she was looking for conductors on Craigslist, like a zillion years ago, right? And so I responded to that. And if any of you know Jean, you know that she is not a woman that wasted time. And so she responded to me like the same day and was like, "Can you come in for an interview on Thursday?" And this was on a Tuesday. And so I was like, absolutely. And so my interview was a working interview. It was at uh, a chorale that doesn't exist anymore, Langston Brown, right? At that center in Arlington, right? So there was a chorale there, and so I went and just did warm ups with them. She gave me a piece of music to at that time. So she played for me then. So she played for me so that I conducted. Then she wanted to make sure that I could play, so I played through one or two songs. That was like on a Thursday, and she said, "Can you start on Monday?" Um, right?
Amazing. That's the
Because at
fastest
that
turnaround ever.
time, it was literally just Jean that was conducting. And there was another woman named Crystal, if any of you remember Crystal. And we got hired round about the same time. So we were employees like 3 and 4, right? So because it was Jean and Larry, and then they had a woman named Jen who worked in the office, but the office was not an office, at the time. And so that very quickly grew. So I started out having 2 chorales, and then by the next season I had 7. Because Encore was growing, at the time it was still relatively new because we're talking 2013. So
Right.
this was a very very long time ago, and so I had 7 chorales all the way out to, I mean, way 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 out in like Lansdowne, in that direction, and then up in Baltimore, and then in Annapolis. I was driving everywhere, right?
Wow.
And then I got asked, and so here's sort of where the genesis of the ROCKS program starts, is that we did something that was like, I honestly don't even remember, something like vaguely rock influenced in one of the chorale pieces, and it went pretty well. And so then Jean and I were talking, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to arrange a rock piece for us?" And I was like, "Sure." So I did Ronnie, by Frankie Valli and Four Seasons, and so I arranged that, and we sang that as a chorale. All the chorales sang that, and the response was extremely positive. People enjoyed that, right? I mean, that was their jam, right? Everything we know how people feel about the ROCKS program now. And so then the next year we started a pilot program in the basement of the Smithsonian. Um, if for any of you that don't know, the Smithsonian Castle has a basement, right? It's where a lot of their education takes place. You go in through that lovely glass entryway just to the right. Little side note, my favorite place in all of DC is that garden, the Enid A. Haupt garden there behind the castle, right? And so I got to walk through that every week, and go down into the basement down there. We had, I think, 2 guys at the time. Maybe by the end of the first session, we had 3, and it was just a 6-week pilot program. And everybody was like, "We have to do this. We have to keep doing this." And so I talked with Jean about, what would this look like if I wanted to take this program and sort of run with it? Would there be financial support for it? Do you think, that we could do this? And so then we kept the one at the Smithsonian and then started the one in Alexandria. And that's the chorale I'm still with, now, 13, whatever, 10 years, 10 and a half years later, that original Rocks chorale out of Alexandria. The one from the Smithsonian has direct through lines to what is now DC Rocks. It eventually moved out of the Smithsonian when we severed our ties with the Smithsonian. That makes it sound much more dramatic. When we didn't renew our partnership, with the Smithsonian, and so then we moved downtown, and it became immediately clear that there was an appetite for this, and there was financial support for it, and that this was going to be, something that people really wanted. And then from there, we just kept growing and growing and growing. And for a long time, I was the only rocks conductor. And then it eventually got to be too much because I was also still doing the chorales. So then I left the chorales and was just doing the rocks program. And then we had to bring in more and more people. And then several years ago, I went through a pretty big career change when I started doing a lot more symphonic stuff. And so then kept Alexandria Rocks and kept consulting with you guys, and then kept doing all of the camps as well. But yeah, so that's really how the rock program started. It was just hey, I think we can make this work. Let me run with this. And we did.
As with so many things at Encore, it's the same story kind of with the Broadway program, where we were doing a little bit of it, incorporating a little bit of it into the chorale repertoire, and people were saying, more of this. And that's just such a lovely way for something to start programmatically, is for people to say, we've been doing it and we want to do more of it.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, so once it got started and got going, those first couple of semesters, now when we think about a semester of rocks music, we think about nine, maybe 10 pieces. How many pieces were you doing a semester at the beginning? Do you remember?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, it was so we were not ever doing more than 6 or 7 pieces, because the biggest challenge that we had, and it's still a little bit of a challenge, but people are used to it now, was I couldn't get people to stop singing the melody, right? Because this was music that they had known for 50 years, right? And so everybody knows, how that song goes, singing the melody. But I was just like, dude, you have to sing the parts here, right? And so it took us a lot longer to learn the pieces at the time, because it was something that was very, very new. Um, and so so we quickly graduated to doing 7 or 8 pieces. But we had a couple of that first semester. We sang, I think, 5 or 6. I've got old programs. Much to Natalie's chagrin, I've got a filing cabinet upstairs that I showed Kathryn on a recent call that literally is just 10 years worth of rocks music.
I can attest to that and say that we've had some questions about, I wonder, do you remember exactly what year? And Jeff is like, here's
Yep.
the program, can pull it right
Yep.
on out, which is amazing. And
So
so delightful. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I've got all these programs. I've got a lot of copies of the scores, and things. Also, I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially the staff on here, are like me, that you didn't realize how much music you stole from your college. Right? When you're going through afterwards, it
Yeah,
was just like, what is this
yeah,
score? And it's like a stamp that says the University of Redlands Choral Music Department. I was like, oh, sorry about that. I've just got decades worth
yeah,
of sheet music,
yeah,
that's up there.
yeah.
The other thing, not just the quantity of the rocks music, but the level of difficulty has just increased exponentially, over the years of what we've been able to sing. And there's one predominant reason is that we have more dudes now, right? When we started out, just an encore in general, but
Mhm.
especially in the rocks program, there were not a lot of tenors and basses,
Right,
right?
right.
And I mean, and now you look at a lot of these groups, like in my Alexandria chorale, I've got 30, I mean, there's just like so many tenors and basses now, and they're good. And it was really hard to choose pieces that didn't require a good bass section,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah. We talk about that all the time when we're talking about choosing repertoire. Especially the tenor and bass parts often are written for voices that are either unchanged or just barely changed. And so
Yeah,
that doesn't lend itself to a really solid bass part.
yeah,
Um, but the other part of it is, and when we're looking at, for example, hiring rocks conductors, when I'm looking at hiring a Broadway conductor, you really can find conductors who have done a lifetime of music directing in Broadway. But thinking about a rocks conductor, you get somebody who can be a rock and roller, but they're not necessarily conducting four-part SATB arrangements of rock and roll music. That's in some ways, a really unique
Yeah,
setup
yeah, for
to be
sure.
doing exclusively rock and roll music.
I think absolutely. And by the way, everybody who's putting questions in the chat, we're seeing those, and
Yes,
we
we
will
are.
get to them.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that makes, if I may, that makes me uniquely qualified to, kind of run this program is the reverence with which I treat rock music, allows me to view it the same way as if I am, conducting a piece by Eric Whitacre, right? Because for me, there really is no difference in the way that those things are taught. There should be no difference in the way that they are viewed, as far as pieces of art are concerned, and there are lots of people who can come in and play the piano and wave their arms through a rocks piece, right? I mean, and for a long time, we had rocks conductors that were doing that, right? Because they were growing, it was growing quickly, and we needed that. And thankfully, we are getting away from that, of course, as an organization. Now we are being very thoughtful about who we're hiring to do that because it is a different type of skill set, right? And like you were saying, the Broadway music is so much just in the choral zeitgeist now. Anybody who had been a high school director, even a church director, anything like that, you are going to have dabbled in the Broadway music, and it is different, in certainly in the rocks repertoire, and it is from a conducting standpoint. You teach them the parts, right? That's great. But then it's, can we teach them how it should be performed, right? Can we dive a little bit deeper into why that is not an appropriate vowel shape, for singing this, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
and we talk about that all the time, that it's like, if we're doing, a piece by Creedence Clearwater, you need to have different vowels than if you're singing Palestrina,
Mhm.
right? And you have to have the background in Palestrina to know that it's different than
Yeah.
singing a CCR piece,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I'm so excited for the tour next year, sort of this three-layered tour, because what we talk about in rehearsal in Annapolis Rocks often is, like, okay, fine, sing this for 30 seconds like a high English choral choir would sing it.
Yep.
That's not stylistically appropriate. Now, sing it like a Broadway belt, also not stylistically appropriate. Let's find what parts work in this piece and what parts aren't appropriate in this piece. But it'll be fun to sort of do all three,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
right
Yeah.
back to back to back.
Kind
So
of run that gamut.
when you're talking about repertoire in terms of rocks, when you're putting together a set of repertoire, when we're putting together a set of repertoire, what are you trying to incorporate? You and I have some phrases that we say regularly, but when you're thinking about encompassing a repertoire, they can't all be from the year.
Yeah. X. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's well, and so it's interesting because even in the time that that I have been here doing this, um, the my philosophy hasn't changed, but what I have access to has changed, and what is needed has changed because we are 10 years further in, right? So, so when I started, people who were 70 are now 80, but the rock music that they grew up with is still the same as what it was, but we now have people who are 55,
Right.
right, who are
Right.
singing, who were 45,
Yeah.
at the time, 10 years ago. And rock music is very different for somebody who is 55 than somebody who is 85,
Yep.
right? And so I try to be very thoughtful about that. And then also, so yeah, so this is one of the questions that people ask, like, what are we thinking about when I'm choosing the repertoire?
What
I
do
want
you?
to make sure that there is a, decadal, that's not a word, but you know what I mean, a decadal representation in here,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
That it is very easy to just do everything from the 60s, right? Because the 60s was the best, the 60s and the 90s were the two best decades for rock music, right? And so, sorry, Kathryn. And so it'd be very easy to only do that. But we have to do some stuff from the 50s, right? Not only because it's historically important, but also because for a lot of our older singers, that is and always will be rock music,
Hmm. Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
And then we have a lot of our younger singers as well that, we're still listening to rock music in the 70s and 80s, so we need to be doing that. So that's thing number one. Want to make sure that the decades are all represented. Number two is trying to make sure that there are good arrangements of these, right? And that has been honestly, the biggest challenge
Yeah.
because there are lots of arrangements of rock songs. Many of them are awful, right? And yeah, I mean, you've experienced that as much as I have. And we don't ever want to give you guys bad music to sing. It is boring, right? It is not challenging for you. You will not have fun singing it, right? Because even if you're not people that read music and you're like, no, I want this to be easier. Trust me, you do not want it to be easier because if by week 6 you're like, great, well, this is good, I know this, then
Got it. Sure.
the rest of the semester, just becomes just sort of going through the motions, right? And so the great challenge with that is we very quickly, I mean, like many, many, many years ago, pretty much exhausted the really good choral arrangements. We are choosing way more music than is being written, right? And so that's why we started doing some of our own arrangements. It's why we've been recycling. Now, also, recycling is great because we've got all these new people coming into the ROCKS program. Also, some of you are old, you're not going to remember this stuff, right? So I'm just kidding. But and it's fun to revisit an old friend, right? To come back to that music. And mixed in, if you're singing 30 pieces of music a year, you're not going to remember all of the nuance of all of these pieces, every time we recycle them, 5 years later. So that's something that we love to do and have to do, and all choirs do, right? How many times have everybody sung the Mozart Requiem, right? But you
Right.
find something new, every time you do it. And then the other element that I try to choose is I always want to introduce some pieces that you might not know very well, right? And that is the most rewarding for me when I have people like emailing me still being like, I was hanging out with my grandkids and we were listening to Bon Jovi and they were like so excited that I knew all of this music, or like Shut Up and Dance, like that was a revelation. Like, I mean, truly, that like took Encore Rocks by storm. And I figured people would like it. But when we were at a camp years after we sang that song and the band started playing that, and all 140 rockers got out on the dance floor and were singing that, I mean, that made me cry. And the person who was leading the band, they're like, why does everybody know that song so well? And so that's the other thing. I try to, push you guys a little bit as well, and just do some pieces that you might be less familiar with. And then I would say that the last element is wanting to make sure that we hit most of like the tent pole pieces, right? That there are just some rock songs that everybody should know, right? Everybody should know Bohemian Rhapsody, right? So we are doing that. Everybody should know The Lion Sleeps Tonight, right? Things like that. And it's really fun for me. It is the great challenge and also a great joy to get to try to choose this music, because it's a big responsibility, right? I mean, you guys are going to be sitting with this for 15 years, not 15 years, 15 weeks. Sorry.
It feels like years sometimes. If you
Yeah,
don't like the music, it feels like years. Yep.
exactly. And I will say, you guys are not shy about letting us know when you don't like the music. Right, and so we try to take that very seriously in how we approach the repertoire selection.
I often say, if any one person comes to me and says, I loved every single piece that was chosen this semester, and I had already known every single piece, then we haven't done our job.
Yeah,
Because, the three pillars at Encore are lifelong learning, wellness, and fun. And yes, yes, fun, 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 so much fun. And wellness, yes, absolutely. But lifelong learning. And if we are not pushing our own envelopes, we don't know what our new favorite pieces might be. And
absolutely.
so, yeah, absolutely. That
Well,
component is really important, I think.
and to David, to your point, it is a lot of these arrangements. So if you guys see in the chat, we were asking about like range, for the basses. A lot of these arrangements, even the really good ones, are being written for high school choirs, right? Because that is who consumes the most music in our country.
Yep.
Is high school choral programs, right? And so arrangers are frequently writing for that. There are not a lot of high schoolers who have low F's, G's, and A's, right? And so a lot of our stuff bottoms out at B flat, right? Maybe an A, here and there. So as we are doing our own arrangements and commissioning things, it's something that we absolutely take into consideration. I mean, and you notice when I do arrangements for you guys, I try to put the tenors in a range that I know you're comfortable. Right? We try to keep the sopranos below the staff. Try to give the basses, some real bass notes there. And that's another thing that I know Kathryn and I both look at a lot, is certainly range, for this. And I have the discussion all the time with Kathryn. Oh, the basses are going to love this one. They get some low notes, in
Yeah.
here.
Yes. Yes, and often, often if the soprano range is low enough, then the tenor and bass range is far too compact, right? It's written for unchanged voices.
Yeah.
But if the tenor and bass range is nice and low, then the sopranos are going far higher than they want to. And I dream of a day when we'll have our own publishing line in which they've written
Yep.
music specifically for encore singers.
So, and if I will, since this is an artistic master class
Mhm.
here, there are actually like very arcane rules about how much space is allowed to be between voice parts,
Yeah.
right? So that has a lot to do with why the basses are where they are, right? Because theoretically, if you're following these music theory rules, there's never supposed to be more than an octave, between any of, the adjacent voice parts.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes the basses aren't going to be able to be that low because of where the tenors are being written, because we all studied the same thing in school. And I mean, most people are trying to get away from that now, but I mean, that is still a pretty typical old school way of writing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and interestingly, so you're talking about four-part chorale writing
Yeah,
is kind of the generic term for it, and it's the rules were kind of established in German chorale writing.
exactly.
Um, and I will admit that early in my career, I was sort of arguing against this. Why are we all learning this? Why this isn't what we're doing, and as composers, this isn't what we're gonna be doing, right? If we're writing for orchestra, or we're writing for band, or even wind ensemble, why are we learning this? But it turns out that
Yeah,
parallel fifths sound very uniquely parallel 50,
yeah,
regardless of how they're written. And so the reason
absolutely.
that we avoid them is because they have a very specific sound. And these rules are actually foundationally very firm. And
Yeah,
so breaking them isn't impossible, but it definitely lends itself to a specific sound in many cases that you may or may not have intended. And if you don't
yeah.
know why, then
Well, yeah, and to not rabbit hole, about voice leading too much here, but to
yeah,
to address your question, Marie, if the tenors and basses say are a twelfth apart from one another, right, then the intonation becomes much more challenging,
yeah, much
right?
harder.
And that's mostly why, and even for these rocks arrangements, that's mostly why, right? Because we are always listening down and trying to tune to the basses, and if we are too far away from them, right, if our intervallic space is too wide, it becomes a lot more challenging to sing in tune.
Oh, we just need to have an entire artistic masterclass talking music theory and part rating and why, because
I
that
love
would
it.
be so delightful and no one
Absolutely.
would come, but it would be great.
Yep.
Um, so let's see. I want to answer a couple of questions and then I still have many more questions for you. Anne is asking, and Jeff, do you feel like choral rocks repertoire is blossoming or restricted? And I have an answer too, but I want to hear your answer.
Yeah, it's very cyclical is where we start out, right? The publishing houses write what people want to sing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it really depends upon what the schools are buying. We went through a period of time over the last several years that it was not flourishing, right? People were just not writing it. And fingers crossed, but the last couple of semesters, we have a lot more access to good new pieces, that are being written, as well as some reissuing of some pieces that had gone out of print, which was kind of nice to see. So I would like to say that we are on an upswing here. And honestly, like as Encore Rocks, since we've got 2,500 singers, right, we are kind of moving the needle there. That like when we call these people and we're like, if we call Hal Leonard and we're like, hey,
Yeah.
we want to do this song, but it went out of print, they're gonna print it. Right. So I would say that things are better than they once were, but they are not as good as they were, 15 years ago.
Yes, so that's exactly what my response was going to be. And I was going to say 15 to 20 years ago, when I was working with a rocks ensemble in Cleveland, it was okay, so we want to sing You've Got a Friend. I would go to the publishing sort of real retail store, and they would order me every single arrangement that existed. And at the time, you could typically get 4 or 5 different arrangements. And I would look at them and say, this one has exactly the rhythms that the singer sang, but they're really difficult to read. This one has all the rhythms super simplified, and it's frankly too simple. And so I would be looking for something in the middle with these ranges. And I would typically be able to pick between 4 or 5 arrangements in publication currently. And that is less likely now. Now, what I'm seeing is if you are looking for a particular piece, it might exist in 2 or 3 SATB arrangements. It might exist in soprano and alto only or tenor bass only. But really, if you're looking at an SATB arrangement, I'm typically only finding 1 or 2, and things have been removed. Things that I have copies, you were talking about earlier, copies that existed that we took from college. I own phenomenal arrangements of pieces that just aren't in print anymore.
Like
Um,
basically everything Tina Chen arranged. She
right.
did like a
Yeah.
whole lot of rocks pieces. They're just
Yeah.
not in print anymore, and I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Right. And so that's something that I find very different, and is interesting to navigate for sure. So I agree with you. It's cyclical. Talk for 30 seconds, though, before we go on to the next subject, Jeff. There is a whole new platform for publishing music through Hal Leonard. Are you familiar with
Oh
this?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
talk about this
Do,
a little bit.
well, go ahead, give people the overview, and then we can talk
Yeah.
about how it applies to
So
us.
what it has been in the past is we've said, like, I'm looking for this piece. Let me see what arrangements have been published. And now there is a self-publishing company through Hal Leonard where I can say, okay, they have, I don't know, Jeff, do you know 150,000
Yeah,
titles that
something.
you can
Yeah,
choose from? And if what you want is on that list, you can create an arrangement and upload it, use it yourself, and then other people can buy your arrangements.
yeah.
I
And
think it's
so
only going to take about 4 or 5 more years of that. And we're going to start to sort ourselves out into some really excellent arrangers and be
yeah,
able to pinpoint those people and say, hey, you who did this arrangement,
yeah.
do another arrangement like this for us. I think that's actually going to revolutionize, especially popular music arrangements.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, it absolutely is. And I mean, like everything else, it's basically crowdsourcing, choral
Yeah.
arranging.
Yeah.
And right now what we find is some of the arrangements are just very mediocre,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as soon as people realize that, as soon as young composers and arrangers realize that there's some money to be made there, it certainly it will get better. And it's smart for Hal Leonard to do that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. The other thing, and like Kathryn was talking about all of the different arrangements that are available. Most of the songs that I would like to do now will have two arrangements. The ones that have any arrangements available will have two, right? They'll have just like your standard accompanied, this is the song, and then there will be an enormously difficult a cappella arrangement,
Yep.
right?
Barbershop. Yep.
Because there is so much a cappella singing now, right? And every college has 9 a cappella groups in it. It's like my cousin, well, my cousin's kid, whatever we say, my cousin is living with us now. He's going to Georgetown, and he sings in one of Georgetown's 6 a cappella groups, right? And all they sing is like modern rock and pop arrangements,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And they're very hard, right? We have done a couple with Encore. The reason, and I'm seeing some people taking issue with this, they are not hard in the way that you would think they would be hard. It's like a lot of vocal percussion, right? And it's not that I don't think you guys could rise to the occasion of doing this. They like need microphones because
Mhm.
basically
Yeah.
it's one person singing a solo and
Yep.
then 16 other people singing vocal percussion behind them, right?
It's some really tight harmonies.
Totally. I
Um,
mean, it's
yeah,
very, very, everything has a second or a fourth or a sixth
yeah,
in it,
yeah.
right? And it's amazing. It just does not lend itself to 150 people singing, a rock arrangement.
That is one of the keys right there that I think is really interesting. And we talk about it all the time in rehearsal. If you're one person doing this with karaoke, have at it. You can do it however you want. But when we're doing 100 people, singing this same soprano line, maybe melody line or accompaniment. We are more, by definition, limited in what we can do times 100,
Yeah.
and it still sounds good from an audience perspective.
There are a lot of arrangements that I will not choose because of
Yeah.
the like rhythmic demands, right?
Yeah.
And there are certain artists that is like we just kind of have to avoid. Like you notice we in the 10 years of doing this have sung one Prince song, right? And I mean, and Prince is one of the most important, figures in rock music in the last 40 years. But I mean, Purple Rain is so hard, right? I
It
mean,
was so hard.
we just did it, right? And it's not, and the choral parts were amazing, right? I mean, I love those big 6 and 8 part choral parts, but then trying to line up all of those little solo lines is enormously difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because and you can take, and it's funny because you talk about like the AI revolution and doing all of that. You can give those parts to the best computer in the world, what Prince sang, and they would not be able to accurately notate what it is, that he sang. It's like, have you ever tried to look at sheet music for a Whitney Houston song? Right? I mean, it's just like
Right.
all of the runs, all of the everything. It's like you just can't accurately notate it.
And you wouldn't want to
Yeah.
sing it in a group of 100 people. It
Oh, of course not,
wouldn't make
because it
sense.
sounds very square.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things I want to talk to you about is your favorite memories over the last 10 years. But before we do that, let's do that glass half full first. Sally is saying she joined during COVID when they were rehearsing over Zoom. So can you talk a little bit about that time in the Rock's history?
Yeah, that was simultaneously the best and the worst time for the group. I say that it was the best time because we all had to be very, very, very creative. And sometimes extreme constraints like that lead to, great booms of creativity. And so we did a whole lot. I mean, we owe us sitting here right now to the pandemic, right? I mean, that's what Encore
Yeah,
University grew out
right.
of, right?
Yeah.
Was the pandemic. I did a lot of these cool like rocks courses that I mean, I every week it was like, all right, let's just talk about something fun and new. I mean, and I exposed you guys to Pantera and Gojira and Between the Buried and Me and like all of these metal bands that you never would have been exposed to were it not for that. And it got everybody singing every week, even though like we couldn't hear each other. We tried to do Jack Trip. Oh boy, that was
Oh,
a that
yeah.
was a that was an experiment. But it was not great because rock music in general, just out in the world, and then also just in Encore Rocks, is so much just about the community, right? And that's what we did not have. But there were so many people that were not local that joined, right? Because that was when we started having people be able to do that, and a lot of them have stayed on. They now do our rocks program online, or they come to the camps, or whatever that is. So it was a time of growth, but it also as a conductor was like so horrible not being able to hear you guys at all, right? Just not having that feedback. I mean, I will say I became a way better pianist during the pandemic because all I was doing was sitting there playing the piano for you guys. And it's funny because I am very positive in the way that I run rehearsals. And so it was so hard for me because I will always tell you guys if you're not doing well, right? And so you can believe me when I say that you are doing well. But it was just like my default to be like, all right, that was great, moving on. And I was like, I have to not say that was great because I don't know, that could have been terrible. I couldn't hear
No.
you
Yep.
guys,
Who
you
knows?
know?
No.
But yeah, so we made it through, and I still think we're feeling the positive effects of that, though, right? Because people still every week are so happy to be coming together into like a real space, making real music, with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We've learned to appreciate things that we didn't even know we were taking for granted.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Patricia says, I wish we could go back to 7 or 8 songs so we could memorize more. So Patricia, that's an interesting point, and I am team memorization all day long. We performed 3 pieces this morning, and one of them was memorized, and all
Okay.
3, frankly, could have been. But one of the things that I will say about that, and Jeff, I'll be curious what you say about this too, is when we chose to split out concerts and have a standalone rocks concert. One of the tricks about only singing 7 songs is it's not a particularly long concert. And so it kind of left the audience and the choir
Yeah.
wanting more. And so the benefit is that we are doing standalone rocks concerts and standalone chorale and standalone Broadway. But the challenging side of it is, yeah, we've added in more rep and we didn't add more weeks of rehearsal. You are exactly right.
Yeah.
So we've added more
So
rep and more difficulty without adding more weeks of rehearsal. Yep.
Can I just say one
absolutely.
thing really quickly? I mean, I was started with Jeff over 10 years ago. I love it so much. But I used to even memorize. Jeff would like, you memorize all this? Because then we can move like we're rockers and not go da 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 da. And I would just encourage that we could at least say, please memorize two pieces, like pick two so that everybody will. What do you think, Jeff? Is that feasible?
I'm going to give the response I was going to give, and then I will address that. Thanks, Trish. As far as the memorization is concerned, I wanna, unless there are memory issues, which I absolutely know that there are, which is part of the reason why we don't ask people to memorize. But with the exception of that, I absolutely guarantee you that if I took your music away when you walked into the concert hall for the concert, they would not affect you in any way. You
Yep.
would
Agree.
absolutely be able to do your concert, right? It is just a crutch for a lot of people, and it's I haven't done that yet, but the two things that I always say are one, you do not need your music, and two, I could mix you guys up, right, and not stand with your sections, and you would love it, right? And there has always been hesitation towards those things. We do it occasionally, in rehearsal, but yeah. And so Trish, to your point, Trish, we have done that. If any of you that have been around for a while, if you remember, that used to be a thing on the first rehearsal. It was like, okay, these are the three pieces that are going to be memorized, this year. Gene was a proponent of that. Um, we got some pushback from people who could not memorize, right? And part of our mission just to make this be as accessible as possible, right? We do not ever want to put people in a situation where they feel like they are not being set up for success. But I am going to continue to just gently push the singers who are close to being memorized to just give it a shot, right? I mean, it's so much more fun, right? I mean, because then we can commune with each other. And conductors like me and Kathryn, like we are going to make eye contact with every single one of you, during the concert, right? And it is very rewarding when you are looking back at us,
Mhm.
right? So yeah. And then to the point of going back to fewer pieces, it really, that did grow out of us wanting to do our own concerts. And I know that all of you prefer to do your own concert and not have it be, just piggybacked onto a chorale concert now.
Yeah. Well, and Jeff, I'll tack on to what you're saying about singing memorized. So, for example, and I know I'm dipping into chorale for a minute, but we did One Foot in Front of the Other, Lead with Love this semester. And for my ensembles, we just learned it by rote. And I just said from the very beginning, my friends, this was intended to be done by rote. We're going to learn it by rote and we're going to sing it memorized. And it is what it is. And, for the event that we just did this morning, where we only sang three pieces, but that was one of them. And suddenly I was working with people from other choirs who hadn't learned it memorized. It's much harder to go from reading music to memorized than it is
Yeah,
to just learn things from memory from the get-go.
yeah,
And so it's a different way of running your rehearsal space. It's slower to learn, right? It takes more time to teach things by rote than it does to learn it from reading music. And so that's a part of where we get where we are. But yeah, I will also say for my group, Annapolis Rockers, at the dress rehearsal, well, the day of the concert, we sang Oye Como Va all the way through because I
absolutely.
expected us to crash and burn. So I thought, well, we'll start it and see where we go. And we never crashed and burned. So then we made it all the way to the end, fully memorized and then got to the performance and still stuck our noses in the scores. But it's entirely possible, to your point, right? We're by
Yeah.
the time we get 15 weeks in, we know it. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was in, I was with my orchestra in Ecuador this past summer and conducting the New World Symphony,
Yeah.
the Dvorak.
Yep.
And
No.
I got just really lost in the music in the first movement. And all of a sudden realized I hadn't turned a page in a really long time. And I was like, I am never going to find where I am. And I was
Nope.
like, all right, brain, we're doing this from memory, right? And if any of you know New World, that, piece is like 47 minutes long. It was legitimately the best I've ever conducted. right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
because even us, like, we use our music as a crutch as well, and
Like,
frequently it's totally unnecessary. And I was able to be so communicative with the orchestra because I was like, they are all I have, right now.
yeah,
So.
exactly. Absolutely. All right. So those are some of the most challenging memories. What are your best memories over the last 10 years of the ROCKS program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I already talked about when we did Shut Up and Dance. The first time we did Budapest at Rocks Camp in Annapolis was another of those moments that like we all everybody that comes to camp is so good about learning their music beforehand, right? And so we when we did our first sing through of Budapest, just the joy on everybody's faces because that song is fun, right? I mean, and rock music is supposed to be fun. That was like a highlight for me when we did Sound of Silence. So Simon and Garfunkel, like my second favorite, rock artists of all time. I brought in probably my favorite like heavy group. My favorite metal group is a band called Disturbed, and they did an exquisite cover of Sound of Silence. And I brought in a speaker to play that for the rocks groups at the time, and it was just like deathly quiet afterwards because everybody was just like so moved by that arrangement. And I was like, frequently silence shows a lot more than applause does. And I mean people were just like crying. It's so good, right? So that really really stands out for me. Honestly, the first, again, and I know there's a handful of you that were there, the first rocks concert in the basement at Smithsonian, it was not even a concert. It was just like invite family and friends. We were in this weird little classroom, right? And we just like moved over to one side of the classroom. But the proof of concept coming to fruition was very very cool for me, and to get to see like, hey, we took a risk with this and here they all are, they're doing this, we're singing these 5 or 6 songs, the audience is enjoying it. I that was a pretty powerful moment. I also have been extremely fortunate that my parents come to rocks camps. The first time I got to conduct my mom, is really fun. I always like have a person that I look at for specific, and I mean you all know when you're that person, right? That's like, okay, on this word, I know Jeff is going to look at me, right? And so it was fun having my mom be that person. My favorite overall like single line of music that we have ever sung. We did again, this year, when we sang "It's Still Rock and Roll to Me," when the tenors and basses just go a pair of pants. It's so funny, right? And I was telling the singers now every morning when I'm getting Felix out, his clothes. I was like, Felix, what do you want to wear this morning? I was like, do you want a pair of pants? And then we always have a fun little chuckle about that. And I mean, and the list goes on and on, but also I think the other like major highlight was when we did Bohemian Rhapsody for, the first time. Actually, we've only done it once, but spoiler alert, we're going to do that again soon. It was, that piece is enormously challenging, right? And hearing that, in the concert, I am a huge advocate of us getting together all of our groups, as what is feasible to sing, because this music lends itself to having, 100, 150 people, and so hearing 150 people with the rock band, all singing Bohemian Rhapsody, it's just, Freddie Mercury would have been proud, and it is, I don't know, this group is so special to me, that when we have moments that have been challenging like that, and then we come to the concert and it just really lands, it makes me super emotional. And I know the impact that we are having on all your guys' lives, and it's very very cool to just get to think that that's something that I get to do, right? So I think for me that's like the major highlight.
I have to say, so first of all, this morning I was at our final Informants of the season, which is a new rocks pilot in the city of Baltimore at the Oliver Senior Center. And I got to watch a group of people see that full circle for the very first time. The like we've been, trudging our way through all of the parts and the tricky rhythms, and they were kind of at a point where they were like, "Yep, we're done." And then and then an accompanist with a conductor and a little bit of a sense of a beat and all of this. And all of a sudden they were like, hold up, this is really fun, right? It goes from all of the work that you've done into, wait a minute. So we ended up like singing all the way through all of the pieces twice because they were
Yeah,
just having so much fun. So that like that was another moment of just watching people experience that for the very first time. It's always exciting when you get to the concert and you go, oh my gosh, look at all these come together. It's so exciting. But when you're watching it for the very first time and a whole room full of people going, oh, this is what we're doing, it's really fun. And
exactly.
the other thing I got to say is, Jeff, holly holy. You have wanted to do this for a long time, and hearing that with a drum set and the rhythm section was the first time that it flipped over from being kind of a ballad to, and in fact, a driving rock, really forward motion.
Yeah.
Such a cool song. And that
It's
sense of really great choral writing and beautiful harmonies. It was a
so
great,
thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's I this is jumping way back to the beginning of the conversation, but yeah, so my mom is a very good musician. My dad is a great lover of music. He's sitting over there right now. My parents are here, happen to be here this week. But my dad is mostly the reason why I like rock music. Obviously my mom likes it, as well. But Neil Diamond in particular was an important part of our family. I grew up in Los Angeles, and so we were super good friends with Neil Diamond's guitarist, right? And they, so just sort of naturally, that was like part of my life, right? And I had some aptitude for music as a kid, I suppose you could say. And so I was always drawn to the bands that their music was better than just like, okay, that's a good pop song, right?
Mhm.
And so that's where I am trying to like, bring some of those things, to the table here. And to what you were saying, like about the drum set, it makes all the difference in the world having the band, right? And I mean, that was one of my big things with Jean, and to her great credit, she was like, yeah, absolutely, is that like we will always perform with the band, right? Because you have to, right? Because this music is not this music if you don't.
Absolutely. It makes all the difference in the world. And in those moments where things just suddenly sync up in a way
Mhm.
that they haven't before, because that rhythm section, which is so integral to the style and the forward motion of a piece, it's just a
Yeah,
delight.
it's like how do you do Purple Rain without Paul just like shredding away on, those solos? You just can't.
Which he totally did. He did such a
Totally.
great job with that. It was
Yeah.
so fun. So fun. Okay, so we have more than a half an hour's worth of questions, so I'm going to get to those in just a minute. We've done a few of them, but there are more to go. But before we move into the question stage in the chat, we've talked about your favorite memories. And what are you looking forward to this 10th anniversary season? Especially, would you like to talk with the people who are here about what's going to be happening repertoire-wise and how we got there for this
Sure.
season?
And I love to see you say that Holly Holy was the audience's favorite. Yeah, I agree. We got the best response from that. It's just got such a build, right? Like it's just got such an incredible build to it. Uh, I think one of the things I'm most looking forward to about the 10th anniversary was for any of you that have been in the program for a long time, it was no secret that for a while we were viewed as being less important than chorale, right? And thankfully, it has not been like that for a long time. But I feel as though the 10th anniversary is going to sort of be the culmination of like everybody that was there from the beginning and has stuck it out, and it's finally like it's like this is our thing, right? And so we have got some exciting events planned for you guys, which we won't talk about, tonight. But just stay tuned, like strap in for a fun year of a lot of exciting, rocks things happening, and then obviously that will all be culminating in us going to Europe together to do a great British Invasion tour over there. But yeah, I think that we have mentioned to you guys that the rep for this upcoming season is going to sort of be our favorites from the last 10 years. So I think that nothing new is coming, except for I'm going to do some arranging. which will be good. That was how this whole thing started, right? Was me doing an arrangement, and so we'll be bringing that back. So I'm really looking forward to that sort of sense of revisiting an old friend. And I think that, everybody's going to be like, oh, I remember when we did this song, right? And then for a lot of the people, everything will be brand new, but there's going to be those, segments of the choirs that will have done it. And so we'll get to kind of lean on them, right? I mean, because for fall, I think we're doing 11 pieces for fall, right? It's a lot, right? There's going to be a lot of music that we are doing, but it's good, right? I mean, if 10 pieces is good, 11 is better.
Well, and in fairness, the 11th piece is old time rock and roll.
Is old time rock and roll, right?
Yep.
I'm also looking forward to everybody stopping calling Kathryn and threatening her if she doesn't bring old time rock and roll back, right? I would just also
Sure.
like to reiterate that we never said that is going away. Right, we said that we are just working in some other pocket pieces, right?
Yep.
That we will have. Yeah, so I've got big plans, not just for this year, but also for the future of the program. I would like to see us getting back to just doing some combined concerts, just like big combined concerts, right? Where the band can play full out. And, I saw a bunch of people in the chat putting like, yes, that's my favorite way to sing this music. I agree with you, friends. And just to let you peek behind the curtain a little bit, part of the reason why we had gotten away from that was just the logistics of it were just untenable, right? Trying to find a space, that could do that. But again, now that there's some dedicated funds for the ROCKS program, as well, doing things like at a Strathmore is not out of the realm of possibility, right? We could do our own big, combined ROCKS concert where we've got 300 people up there, and the full band, and just like totally rocking out the way this music is meant to be being sung. Right. And so I really look forward to that. I will also say to all of you on this call right now, we could not have a better leader or advocate for the ROCKS program than Kathryn. And so I am very grateful for that. She and I have calls together all the time. We meet up for coffee. Like we are constantly in dialogue, about the program. Some of my crazy ideas, she's like, well, that's great. Thank you for bringing that to me, but it's really, this is a very good partnership. So we are going to just plow ahead, to the next 10 years, after this. And I've got no interest in going anywhere. And I certainly won't be. And so we've got lots of exciting things coming. And so for this year, for fall, we're going to be I mentioned it before, we're going to be bringing back Bon Jovi. Super excited, to be singing Bon Jovi. That was one of the first ones that we did that basically none of you knew that music, right? And it was like brand new for almost everybody, right? And then we'll be doing Ain't No Mountain High Enough. If you remember the first time we did that, the great Marvin Gaye and Tammy. I love seeing all of you guys start singing here. One of my favorite pieces that we've ever done, doing Bridge Over Troubled Water. Right, and then the aforementioned Bohemian Rhapsody, we'll be bringing that out. So for any of you sopranos that were afraid that you were not going to get to sing high enough, there are a lot of lovely high G's and A's in Bohemian Rhapsody. There, we're going to be doing my arrangement of Peggy Sue. Of course, we talked about doing we're old time rock and roll. Just a couple years ago, we did this lovely arrangement of Both Sides Now, which really was deeply effective for people. We're going to be singing that again. We're doing Blue Suede Shoes. If you remember the first time we did that, so fun, right? And we talked about there's these seminal pieces that you have to do. I mean, that is one of these like tentpole pieces in rock music. So we'll be doing that. Our single most requested piece of music of all time was everybody wanted to sing Africa, right? And then that got incredibly disrupted from the pandemic. And then like we tried to learn it and then tried to learn it and it just kept being pushed off. We eventually did do it, right? But so we'll be bringing that back. So we'll be getting to do Africa. Couple of Christmas pieces, some of our favorites there. We're doing Happy Christmas, War is Over. We'll be doing Feliz Navidad. So a bunch of stuff in fall here that I'm excited about. Some other pieces that we'll be doing scattered throughout the year, depending, that you will get to sing. We're doing The Lion Sleeps Tonight. We're doing Longest Time. We're doing Shut Up and Dance. We're doing Higher and Higher, Beautiful Day, Fields of Gold. Just a lot of our favorite pieces that we have done. A lot of you were saying, and then I'll stop talking. That you miss the medleys. We are going to be also bringing back a couple of the medleys. Part of what was challenging, and there is an explicit reason why we stopped doing the medleys. When you just got to sing 18 measures of a piece, then you felt like you couldn't then do the full piece, right? It was just like, well, we just sang that. I was like, well, but did we really sing it, right? But so that's the reason why we got away from doing those, right? That it was just like it took up a huge chunk of the concert, and then we didn't actually get to experience the pieces of music.
And a huge chunk of our rehearsal time. Yep.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
ABBA medley was 55 pages long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So from a rehearsal standpoint, Jeff, when we sat down to make this short list of our very favorites, the goal was our favorite piece one per year so that we would have 10 pieces that we could bring to you in one semester of our top 10 favorites. And
Yeah.
our top 10 favorites ended up being a list of how many pieces?
64.
I think so.
So I will say, however, if any of you are very discerning historians of Encore Rocks, there will be one piece from every year of
Yep.
Encore Rocks
Yep.
that we are doing, and that was very intentional
Yep.
to make sure of that.
Yeah, and it was such a fun conversation to go through because we have a database of all of the pieces that have been performed every semester of every year. So to talk through all of them, and Jeff, for me, I know these pieces, but I wasn't at Encore. Jeff has clear memories of every single one. Oh, this was so fun, and oh, we have to do this again. And so, for me, it just reinforced what a joy the ROCKS program is, and has been, and is going to continue to be because all of this music brings up so many of these lovely memories. Okay, friend, we have so many questions.
Sure, let's do it.
So many questions. So this one is, remember the reverence you communicated to us for Proud Mary and Bohemian Rhapsody back in the early days of ROCKS?
Yeah.
Not really a question, but just that reverence.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I know we could have this go until midnight, which we won't do. But I mean, it is impossible to extricate the lives that these singers were living and the history of what was going on in the world, from the time that they were singing this and the music itself. And I mean, it's like, you hear about, the backstory and everything of Proud Mary. And I mean, and then you go and listen to the recording and just listen to the emotion in her voice, right? I mean, it is incredible. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yes, how can you not have reverence, for that? And Bohemian Rhapsody is the single greatest rock song ever written. Right. It is not my favorite, rock song. It's certainly up there, but it's basically a 7-minute opera. Right. I
Yes,
mean, and it
absolutely.
has all of these different little movements that are in it and like crazy good choral sections and all of these meter changes, and like way up in the stratosphere and then like way, way, way down in the basement. And I mean, it's pretty much the perfect song, right? It's the first time I ever heard that song, I was driving to visit my grandma in the Bay Area. Right, and we were in the back of our minivan, and my sister is 4 years older than me, and so she informed like a lot of my rock taste, and that song came on the radio, and I was like, "What is this magic?" And so I said something, and then of course my sister, being who she was like, "How do you not know that song?" And I was like, "I'm 7," but it was that was a transformational moment for me, hearing that song for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And same, my older brother affects, quite a bit of my rock and roll
Yeah.
familiarity and repertoire, which is delightful. So David said, so when do we get a shot at Queen's Somebody to Love? So my friends, I'm going to put the link to the survey. These are a few of my favorite pieces, so that you all can put your votes in for your favorite pieces sometime.
Can I tell you specifically why that song hasn't been done?
Yes.
Mostly the arrangements of that require a solo, and we try to steer clear of pieces that require significant solo work.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then sometimes, like in Prince, we decide that the time has come and we need to
Yeah.
do it anyway.
And we'll do it. I mean, that song is brilliant.
Um, for those of you, I am seeing all of the chats, by the way, saying it was hard to get in. The original, one of the links in the email was hard. And I'm so sorry about that, you guys. Marianne has been working overtime and answering your questions and letting you in the room and sending links to people who've emailed in. So I am so sorry about
It
that.
is recorded.
It is recorded. Yep, all
Yeah.
of this has been recorded. So, yes. So Marie says, so why not break that rule? After all, rock music breaks a lot of the old classical music rules. And I think we kind of addressed this
Yeah.
because you can actually sort of tell and feel when it just doesn't sit right, or there's all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
And like you said, for the distance between voices, for intonation purposes, absolutely. Jan says, I worked with music publishers and know that some composer arrangers are aware of the older voice range, i.e. Kirby Shaw and Jay Althouse. Yes. So, and I will say, if you look carefully at our arrangers, Kirby Shaw shows up a lot. There are, Roger Emerson shows up a lot. There are arrangers who are very savvy and aware.
Yeah.
Um, so we will tend to gravitate towards a few of them. Jan, you could send me an email sometime and we could work together on how to work with publishers. Although we've got some ins now. I mean, the beautiful thing about ordering 2,500 copies of any given piece, right? If all of Encore sings it, we order 2,500 copies, which then often buys out the entire country's supply. I have
Literally, friends. Yeah.
Literally, yep, I've actually done that a few times. And I've had our own conductors email me and go, hey, not cool. I
Yeah.
just needed a couple copies of this for my church program or whatever. But the bonus of that is we have sway more and more with the publishers. So Margarita says, what's the availability of doo-wop arrangements? Those of us in our 70s and 80s would like to know.
So we've done a fair bit of doo-wop, actually. And that doo-wop holds a special place in my heart. I spent a lot of my childhood sitting on the floor of my den with my dad watching PBS doo-wop concerts. Right. And
Huh?
so we've done, and every time he was like, he still sounds as good as he did back then. I'm like, yes, Dad, I get it. But we've done a fair bit of doo-wop. There is going to be some doo-wop that is going to be coming back.
I love it. I love it. Um, that Marie is saying, I'd love a masterclass on theory and writing and arranging orchestration. So Marianne East, you can add that to our list, my friend.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Please don't assume that sopranos shouldn't have any music that goes above an F. In our eight soprano section, we have at least three who are confident at G, A flat, A range.
We're
Yes,
not
and
going to. Yeah.
it's not consistent enough across the section, right? For it to be something that's just always going to be incorporated. And then, same as not singing things with solos, just sometimes you really want to do a piece. And so you're going to say, okay, we're going to expand our range on this piece, but we're going to try not to do it for all 10 ever.
Yeah.
How many publishers are there now? What is the competition? Boy, Joanne, that's an interesting question. The answer is a lot. Um, if I had to guess off the top of my head, I could get to 20 pretty easily, but that's just within the United States. So the thing is, there are publishers that only do sacred music. There are publishers that specialize in church music. There are publishers that specialize in band music. There are publishers that specialize in all these kinds of things. So for choral music, I don't know, Jeff, do you have a guess at that? I would guess somewhere around 35 major publishers, but then people can independently publish as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
Mhm.
the question really is how many publishers are we buying music from, right? I
Right.
mean, because there are, I mean, realistically, probably 100, right? Because there's so many subgenres of things, but there are 15 to 20, that are like the major publishers
Right.
that we are always getting our music from.
Well, and I'm going to be totally honest with you guys about something that is something that I'm going to be working on in the future is, we order our music. We choose our music about 6 months ahead, 6 months ahead, and then we get that order over to our ordering company that works with the publishers. I had to, for the chorale repertoire this fall, I had to remove a piece from a smaller publishing company that I was really excited about working with because they simply said, we can't get you the number of copies that you want in the time frame that you need it. And we were asking for 1,800 copies in 3 months' time. And they, for a smaller publishing house, that's just too many. They couldn't do it. And so we're starting to look at, could we be ordering music 9 months ahead? Should we be considering ordering it 12 months ahead so that we can give business to these smaller publishing companies, and work with them in ways that fit their capacity as well as our needs. Um, so yeah, the publishing conversation is a much bigger, we could have a whole conversation about that as well.
Especially when we're going to be doing our own arrangements and like yeah, so there's all sorts of complicated things. But
Yep.
fortunately, we've got great staff, and the staff is ever expanding, and this will all be part of the equation.
Yep, absolutely. And Marie is asking, is that like a Glee phenomenon? I would say that the acapella resurgence is definitely partly to do with Glee, don't you
Yeah,
think?
and Pitch Perfect,
Pitch
right? I mean
Perfect. Yep, same time.
those movies, and
Mhm.
it's also sort of like it was kind of in the zeitgeist, and then those movies sort of like just brought it, back into popular culture.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, Mike says Encore's response to COVID was heroic.
Thank
That's amazing. I wasn't on the team yet, and so that's amazing. So, has any Night Wish been tried? Marie is asking.
Nightwish, like the band. Um, no.
I'm intrigued, Marie. You might need to follow up and say more about that. Um,
Uh, yeah, I mean, I sorry, I'm just like flabbergasted because that's such a deep cut. I mean, so if who you are talking about is like Nightwish, the symphonic metal band, uh, they're spectacular. And no, we have not done any pieces by them. But yeah, talk to me
but
offline. I would love to talk with you about Nightwish.
but now I'm looking it up, so that's intriguing.
Well, they've
Uh,
got like a chick lead singer that is baller. I mean, she's so good. So yeah, that's amazing.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Doing the viral concerts with all the support Encore provided was awesome. Amazing. Mike says, I'm happy with 10 songs. It's a great challenge, right? That lifelong learning and the challenge. Um, I love the number of songs, but I just joined the past session. Yeah, for
Can
more
can
songs.
I can I hop in for a question that has been put
Please.
here very recently that I want to make sure that we get addressed. I
Yep.
would say the thing that is asked of me the most as somebody that like has the ear of people in the office is what if I just donated more money? Could we have an accompanist every single rehearsal? Um, it is not that simple, right?
Mhm.
For a lot of reasons. And so somebody asked in here, can we do a fundraiser to raise money to have more rehearsals with the band?
Mhm.
That is not out of the realm of possibility, right? It is as we are because we hear you loud and clear. Having more rehearsals with the band would be great. It would be great for the band. It'd be great for everybody. The difficulty is that the band gets to go to like one, max, maybe two rehearsals, right? And for a long time, it was always Annapolis, right? And then Annapolis stopped being the one that the band went to, and then it went to being Alexandria, and then Annapolis was like, well, why don't we get the band anymore, right? And it's just sort of like where is the nucleus of the musicians, right?
It
And
really
so
is. Yep.
there are so many other logistical issues that go into getting the band rehearsed than just the financial. But the part of that question is, could we raise more money for that? Absolutely. And like the ROCKS fund is a thing that exists. We do a ROCKS fundraiser every year. I mean, that is where a lot of the funding comes, from this. And so all of these things are on the table. But just know that that is something that we as a leadership team do talk about, the how good it would be to have more access to accompanists and bands earlier. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure that we got to that.
no, that's true. And it's something that's constantly in conversation. I will also say though, the first 7, 8 rehearsals, there's no need for even an accompanist or a band because we're still learning notes and
Yeah.
figuring our way around to some extent. And I know it seems like when it all comes together in that last rehearsal, it's really easy to say, well, we should just have this every week. But the truth is, as singers, we're not ready for that yet either, right? So you could add a band from the very first rehearsal and it would be fun, but be chaotic for everyone. So there is some magic in it coming together. And yes, we're talking about it. I will tell you, and this is very premature, where it's not even in the next 2-year pipeline. I don't even know if it's in 3-year pipeline. If we bring an accompanist in for a third rehearsal, it wouldn't necessarily be for the last 3 rehearsals. It would be for a random rehearsal mid-semester so that you get that experience of going, oh, this is where we actually are in the music. And this is where we need to continue working, right? So a rehearsal with an accompanist mid-semester or with the band 2/3 of the way through. But the other thing to remember is the band also has to learn their charts. And once we get our charts, then there's a little bit of time in between when the band builds their charts and all of that. So there's a lot of layers to it, which is delightful. Um, and Marie says, yep, she figured out singing Oye Como Va that she didn't actually need as much music. And Anne makes a good point, which is you spend 13 rehearsals looking at your music and then need to sort of readjust how you function with this. Yep. Um,
And I just wanted to say, Kathryn, that I wrote that in response to the getting books out of our hands.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just hard to break that habit,
it is.
but I'd love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Somebody
Um,
mentioned that they enjoyed singing Dream On. That is also on the list of things that will make a reappearance in the next year.
yep, yep. Metal music is very underrated by so many people. Joby says Disturbed's version was incredible. Yep. I found that our audience responds better when we have singers who have memorized the music and can look at both Jeff and out to our audience. What? Really?
I've could have fooled me. No,
Have
yeah,
you ever heard
that's
that from anyone else?
I know.
Yes,
That's great.
absolutely. Well, and interestingly, as we as conductors, as we can look up at our singers, then our singers are looking back at something, it's sort of a full cycle thing. Absolutely. Yes, some of the conductors go over and over to the point where you can watch the conductors more than looking at the music, which is great. Y'all are fans of memorization in the text chat on Zoom. And
Right.
then when it comes to the concert, you still go back to your safety spot. The more many groups could sing together like we did at Capital One, the better. Yes. And to Jeff's point, yes. The other thing I'll say is places like Schlesinger, for example, in Alexandria, which is a great hall to sing in, they have a max capacity on stage of 180 singers. So once you add in the band and the singers, that's really only like 2 of our groups. And so where we think about, what we were able to do at the Kennedy Center, where it was hundreds and hundreds of people, there are precious few stages where the fire code even allows 300-400 singers on stage, which is one of the big challenges.
But just know, friends, that I am beating that drum to everybody who will listen, right?
Yes.
Is that we should have concerts of 150 plus people.
Yep, absolutely. And that is, you're not the only person beating that drum. So I think there's a lot of energy around that, and a lot of excitement, especially for the smaller rocks groups to get to do that. Yes, and big thumbs up from people for the Rocks tour. How
Yeah,
many of you
absolutely.
participated in a Rocks tour? Can you just like raise your hands where you are? Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. The Rocks tour has been a really fun thing for a variety of reasons. Um, Hi, Mama and Papa Dokken. I love it. Wait, Jeff, can your parents unmute and say hi?
Say hi, Mom.
Oh, they're literally right there.
Oh yeah,
Hi.
she literally came and sat 6 inches from me right as we were starting. If you notice that my camera turned off for a second, I was like, "You can't sit there." So yeah, and my dad is over on the couch. Yeah, they're here. They
Oh,
are they are the reason why I am who I am, and it is such a joy for me that many of you are friends with them now, and they come on a lot of the camps, and do all of that. And yeah, I mean, you frequently mention like my, knowledge of rock music, especially like this oldies rock music.
yeah.
That just straight up came from my dad, right? I mean, and he is just a font of useless information. Um,
Good
you
job,
know,
Jeff's dad. Good job,
uh,
Jeff's dad.
so
I love it. Can
yeah,
you have your parents talk to my parents? Because I keep trying to talk my parents into coming to Chautauqua, and as
yeah.
of yet, I haven't convinced them, but I think it would be so fun. Um,
I'm seeing it because we've just got a couple of minutes left here,
yeah,
friends. I'm seeing a lot of people asking if the ROCKS program is going to keep expanding. Like, what is the future of this? Let me just jump in on that really quickly. Yes, I mean the ROCKS program is absolutely
oh
going to
man,
keep
yeah,
expanding, right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's and we're constantly in discussions, about new venues, for doing that. And anytime, because DC is such a, transient place, what tends to happen is that we have people that come through DC, they sing for a bit, and then they're like, I'm going home to Sheboygan, right? And then they're like, I would like to start a chorale there. Well, great. If there is, an appetite for doing it, I mean, as you can see, that is one of the things that like Joshua is like the king of, is getting these things started and stable, all across the country. So absolutely, there will also be more local rocks groups. And Kathryn and I have a big call coming up in a couple weeks about how to better utilize me a little bit, in these new groups, that are being started, as well. So there's just like a little bit more cohesion and synergy around all of these, disparate groups throughout the region. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of exciting stuff coming up. Some of the other things on the horizon, like I said, we are going to start just doing some arranging, but then also start trying to find some arrangers, right? That aren't just me and that aren't just people here. I've got some songs I really, and I know that it's like so morbid, but I really would like to do a medley of songs from like the teenage tragedy song movement. Doing like a medley of like Teen Angel and Leader of the Pack and Dead Man's Curve and Tell Laura I Love Her, right? And I mean, all these songs are so sad, but they're so good, right? I mean, can you imagine how good a medley would be, like of all of that music? So yeah, so we'll see. I mean, we're constantly thinking about it, and the ROCKS program is thriving and is just going to keep doing awesome things.
Amazing. And I mean, just to address the, is the ROCKS program going to continue to expand in terms of actual ensembles? I have to say, of the five pilots that we did, Chapel Hill, Sentimental Journeys, San Diego Chorale is a ROCKS program. San Diego ROCKS. Frederick now has a ROCKS program. The pilot in Baltimore was a ROCKS program, and we are working on an Anne Arundel County Broadway program. But three of the five were ROCKS programs because it is that popular, and I absolutely love that, because to some extent, just speaking frankly, there are a lot of community ensembles. There are a lot of community choruses out there. They tend to sing more traditional chorale repertoire. But the idea that you can bring these rock and roll pieces into a choral setting, and do nothing but that is really just so delightful. And it's very, very popular. So yes, the
Yes.
rock and roll program is expanding as quickly as we can help make it happen.
And to piggyback on what Kathryn just said and Josh's text there, the reason why Encore in general works, right, is because it is good music in good venues with professional conductors, that you have actual sheet music in front of you, right? I mean, and that was the whole point of the organization, when this started, right? And so we are very thoughtful about that with the rocks groups, right? That it's not just like, okay, we're just gonna all get together and sing the melody of Blue Suede Shoes. It was like, and the reason why there's a need for them is because people love being in a choir but getting to sing the music that they know, right? I mean, and that's why it works and why it's fun. And so we are going to keep doing that because there should be rocks groups in all 50 states.
Yeah. Um, yes, there should be encore in all 50 states, and there should be rocks groups in all 50 states. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan. Give us a little bit, though, my friends. We need a bigger team than we currently have, in order to do that. Um, friends, we only have 1 minute left. But Jeff, first of all, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Thank you for this delightfully creative idea of yours. Thank you for your incredible leadership over these 10 years and the next 50. Thank you for all of the energy and wisdom that you put into this and just creative joy that you put into it and that you give to all of us. It has been an incredible, incredible 10 years, and I've only gotten to be a part of a few of them, but just even talking through the history of it. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all of it. And for all of you who have participated in the ROCKS programs, thank you. Because I have to say, the ROCKS programs are so joyful. Every single encore program is joyful, but I'm telling you what, the rockers show up. Y'all show up to party. And it is an absolute blast. And so, thanks to all of you as well for all of the incredible ways that you support Encore and the Encore Rocks program. Like Jeff said, there are some delightful additional surprises coming this year. So, keep your ear peeled for that. There's a great fundraiser coming. Joshua Vickery, if you're still on, can we announce the date of the Rocks fundraiser yet or not?
October 18th.
Uh-huh. So
There it
mark
is.
your calendars, my friend, because you're going to want to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And to Joshua and the whole team as well. It takes a whole village to make all of this work as seamlessly and in such a fun way. But it is so worthwhile, and it's just such an incredible program. So, friends, just big shout out, Jeff, to you and to all of you rockers out there. You are endlessly cool and endlessly fun. And it is such a joy to have this program, and we can't wait to celebrate it all year long.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Of course, thank you, everybody. Yeah, I mean, you all know how I feel about you and about the program. I will be more emotional about it when we are talking at some of these special events coming up. But there's a reason why I am still here. There's a reason why I was doing an interview with somebody asked me, what I wanted on my tombstone, and it would say, founder of Encore Rocks. Right? This is a very important organization to me, and it's because of you guys. So thank you very, very much. And Josh, Kathryn, thanks for giving me the opportunity, to still be here. And this is just the beginning, guys. There's so much more to come. So I love you all, and really, this is home, and it's because of you guys. So thank you.
Amen.
Rock on, you
Amen.
guys. Thank you
Yep.
for joining
Rock on.
us.
Good night.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. And thank you again to AARP for sponsoring these monthly master classes. Next month, we can do some percussion with Tom Teasley. So we will see you then. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Good night.